Chapter LX. Of what happened to Don Quixote going to Barcelona. The morning was cool, and it showed signs of being cool the same way the day Don Quixote left the inn, first finding out which was the most direct way to go to Barcelona without touching Zaragoza. Such was the desire he had to make a liar out of that new historian who was said so much to blame him. He despaired of seeing the laziness and little charity of Sancho, his squire, because, as he believed, he had given himself only 5 lashes, an unequal and small number for the infinities that were missing. Nothing more or less could happen now to Dulcinea's disenchantment, if I flogged Sancho in spite of him, that if the condition of this remedy is that Sancho receives the 3,000 or so lashes, what does it matter to me that he gives them to him, or that someone else gives them to him, since the substance is that he receives them, they arrive by where will they arrive? With this imagination Sancho was reached, having first taken Rocinante's reins, and arranged them so that he could whip him with them, he began to remove the ribbons. When Sancho woke up in full agreement with him, and said, "What is this? Who touches me and unwraps me?" "It is I," responded Don Quixote, "who have come to make up for your faults and remedy my work. I am here to flog you, Sancho, and to discharge, in part, the debt to which you obligated yourself. Dulcinea perishes, you live carelessly, I die wishing. The lashes that I forced myself to have to be voluntary, and not by force, and now I don't feel like whipping myself. It's enough that I give your grace my word to beat me up 984 and get angry whenever I want." "There is no need to leave it to your courtesy, Sancho," said Don Quixote, "because you are hard of heart, and, although villainous, soft on the flesh." And so he tried and struggled to unbind him. Seeing this, Sancho Panza rose to his feet and, attacking his mistress, embraced him with his arms broken, and, tripping him, struck him face up on the ground. He put his right knee on his chest, and with his hands he held his hands, so that he neither allowed him to surround nor encourage him. Don Quixote said to him, "What, traitor? Against your master and natural lord you go out of control? I am neither taking away a king, nor setting up a king. Your mercy promises me that he will stay, and that he will not try to whip me for now, that I will leave him free and unhampered, where not, here you will die, traitor, enemy of Dona Sancha." Don Quixote promised him, and he swore for the life of his thoughts not to touch him in the hair of his clothes, and that he would leave in all his will and discretion to whip himself whenever he wanted. Sancho got up and deviated a good distance from that place, and, going to get closer to another tree, he felt that they touched him on the head, and, raising his hands, he bumped into 2 feet of a person with shoes and leggings. He trembled with fear, he went to another tree, and the same thing happened to him. You don't have to be afraid, because these feet and legs that you touch and don't see, undoubtedly belong to some outlaws and bandits who are hanged on these trees. Already, in this, it was dawn, and if the dead had frightened them, no less they were afflicted by more than 40 live bandits who suddenly surrounded them, telling them in the Catalan language to be quiet, and to stop, until their captain arrived. The bandits came to groom the Dapple, and to leave him nothing. And give Sancho good advice that the duke's shields and those that had been taken from his land came from a venrira that he had girded. His captain arrived at that time. He came to him saying, "Do not be so sad, good man, because you have not fallen into the hands of some cruel Osiris." "It is not my sadness," responded Don Quixote, "that I fell into your power, O brave Roque, whose fame is boundless on earth. It is because my carelessness was so great that your soldiers caught me without him. Break. Because I let you know, O great Roque, that if they found me on my horse, with my lance and my shield, it would not be very easy for them to surrender, because I am Don Quixote de la Mancha. Valiant knight, do not get upset or have the sinister fortune in which you find yourselves. It could be that in these stumbling blocks your crooked luck was straightened out, that the sky, by strange and never-seen detours, of unimagined men, usually raises the fallen and enriches the poor." Don Quixote was about to thank him when they heard behind them a noise like a herd of horses, and it was only one, on top of which a young man was coming at full fury. He said, "In your search I came, O brave Roque, to find in you, if not a remedy, at least relief in my misfortune, and I am Claudia Geronima, daughter of Simon Forte, your singular friend and particular enemy of Clochel Tor Ellis. That it is also yours, for being one of those of your opposite side, and you already know that this Tor Ellis has a son whose name is Don Vicente Tor Ellis. This one, Viome, broke me, I listened to him, I fell in love, stealing from my father, because there is no woman, no matter how withdrawn and demure she may be, who does not have enough time to put into execution and effect her hasty desires. Finally, he promised me to be my husband, and I gave him the word to be his, without moving forward in works. I learned yesterday that, forgetting what he owed me, he was marrying someone else, and that this morning he was going to marry, a new one that disturbed my senses and ended my patience. And quickening the pace of this horse, I overtook Don Vicente about a league from here, and, without complaining or apologizing, I fired these shotguns at him, and, in addition, these 2 pistols. There he left him among his servants, who neither dared nor could put themselves in his defense. I have come to look for you so that you can take me to France, where I have relatives with whom I live, and also to beg you to defend my father, because Don Vicente's many do not dare to take unbridled revenge on him. Come, lady, and let's see if your enemy is dead, and then we'll see what matters most to you. Don Quixote said, there is no one to take the trouble to defend this lady, I will take care of it, give me my horse and my weapons, and wait for me here, I will go look for that knight, and, dead or I live, I will make fulfill the word promised to so much beauty. Roque, who was more interested in thinking about the event of the beautiful Claudia than in the reasons of master and waiter, did not understand them, and, ordering his squires to return to Sancho all that they had taken from the dapple, also ordering them to retire to the part where they had been staying that night, and then he set off with Claudia at full speed to look for the wounded, or dead man, Don Vincent. They found Don Vicente in the arms of his servants, who with a tired and weakened voice begged to be left there to die, because the pain of his wounds would not allow him to pass later. Claudia and Roque threw themselves from their horses, came to him. If you gave me these, according to our agreement, you would never see yourself in the steppe. Then, isn't it true, said Claudia, that you were going to marry Leonora this morning, the daughter of the rich Balvestro? No, by the way, answered Don Vicente, my misfortune must have brought you these news, so that, jealous, you would take my life, which, since I leave it in your hands and in your arms, I have my luck for fortunate. And, to assure you of this truth, squeeze your hand and receive me as your husband, if you wish, for I have no other greater satisfaction than to give you the wrong you think you have received from me. Claudia squeezed her hand, and her heart squeezed her, so that on the blood and chest of Don Vicente she remained unconscious, and he took a fatal paresis. She came back from Claudia's fainting spell, but not from Don Vicente's parasitism of her, because her life ended. "O cruel and inconsiderate woman," he said, "how easily you move to put such an evil thought into execution. O raging force of jealousy, to what a desperate end do you lead the one who welcomes you in her bosom." The servants wept, Claudia fainted at every step, and the whole circuit seemed like a field of sadness and a place of misfortune. Finally, Roque Guinart ordered Don Vicente's servants to take his body to the place of his father, who was nearby, so that they could bury him. Claudia told Roque that she would like to go to a monastery where an aunt of hers was abbess, in which she planned to end her life, that of another better and more eternal husband accompanied by her. She praised Roque for her good intentions, offering to accompany her as far as she wanted, and to defend her father from her relatives and from the whole world, if she wanted to offend him. She did not want her Claudia's company, in any way, and, thanking her offers with the best reasons she knew, she said goodbye to her crying. Don Vicente's servants carried her body, and Roque returned to his own, and to this end they had the love affairs of Claudia Geronima. When Roque arrived, he asked Sancho Panza if they had returned and restored the jewels and medals that the dapple men had taken from him. Sancho answered yes, but that he lacked 3 dressers, which were worth 3 cities. "What are you saying, man?" said one of those present. "I have them, and they're not worth 3 reals. "That's right," said Don Quixote, "but let my squire estimate them in what he has said, since the one who gave them to me gave them to me." He ordered them to return to Point Roque Guinart, and, ordering theirs to be placed on the wing, he ordered all the dresses, jewels, and money, and everything that had been stolen since the last distribution, to be brought there before, and, briefly making the trial, turning what was not distributable and reducing it to money, he distributed it throughout his company, with such legality and prudence that he did not pass a point or defraud anything of distributive justice. This done, with which everyone was happy, satisfied, and paid, Roque said to Don Quixote, "If you didn't keep this punctuality with these, you wouldn't be able to live with them." To which Sancho said, "According to what I have seen here, justice is so good that it is necessary that it be used even among thieves themselves." In this, one or some of those squires who were posted as sentinels along the roads arrived to see the people who were coming along them and to notify their elder of what was happening, and he said, "Lord, not far from here, along the road that goes to Barcelona, a large crowd of people comes." "Well, all of you go out," replied Roque, "and bring them here to me later, without letting any of you escape." Roque said to Don Quixote, "A new way of life must seem to our Lord Don Quixote, new adventures, new events, and all of them dangerous. They have put in me I don't know what desires for revenge, which have the strength to disturb the most peaceful hearts. I am naturally compassionate and well-intentioned, but, as I have said, wanting to take revenge for a wrong that was done to me, thus hits all my good inclinations on earth, that I persevere in the state, despite and in spite of what I understand, and, as one abyss calls to another and one sin to another sin, the revenges have been linked in such a way that not only mine, but those of others I take on myself, but God is served that, although I find myself in the middle of the labyrinth of my confusions, I do not lose hope of getting out of it to a safe port. Mr. Roque, the principle of health lies in knowing the illness and in wanting the patient to take the medicine that the doctor orders. Your Grace is sick, you know your ailment, and heaven, or God, to put it better, is our doctor will apply medicines that heal him, which usually heal little by little and not suddenly and by a miracle, and more, that discreet sinners are closer to mending themselves than simple ones, and, since your worship has shown his prudence in his reasons, there is only one thing to do but be of good cheer and hope for an improvement in his illness of conscience. Roque laughed at Don Quixote's advice, to whom, changing the conversation, he related the tragic event of Claudia Geronima. In this, the squires of the prey arrived, bringing with them 2 horsemen, and 2 pilgrims on foot, and a women's carriage with up to 6 servants, who accompanied them on foot and on horseback, with 2 other muleteers who assisted them. Gentlemen brought. Sir, we are 2 captains of Spanish infantry, we have our companies in Naples and we are going to embark on 4 galleys, which they say are in Barcelona with orders to go to Sicily, we carry up to 200 or 300 shields. Roque asked the pilgrims the same as the captains, he was told that they were going to embark to go to Rome, and that between them they could carry up to 60 reals. He also wanted to know who was in the car, and where, my lady Dona Guiomar de Quiñones, wife of the regent of the Vicariate of Naples, with a small daughter, a maid, and a duenna, are the ones in the car, 6 servants accompany her, and her money is 600 scudi. So, said Roque Guinart, we already have 900 escudos and 60 reals here, my soldiers must be up to 60, look at how it fits each one, because I'm a bad accountant. The captains were afflicted, the lady regent was saddened, and the pilgrims were not pleased at all, seeing the confiscation of their goods. She said, Your Mercedes, gentlemen captains, out of courtesy, be served to lend me 60 shields, and the lady regent 80, to please this squad that accompanies me. They can go their way freely and without embarrassment, with a safe conduct that I will give them, so that, if they run into others of some of my squads that I have divided by these contours, they do not harm them, that it is not my intention to offend soldiers or any women, especially those who are principals. She ordered the lady regent to one of her servants to then give the 80 scudi that had been distributed to her, and the captains had already dispersed the 60. The pilgrims were going to give all their misery, but Roque told them to remain silent, and turning to his men, he said to them, These 2 shields belong to each one, and there are 20 left over, the 10 are given to these pilgrims, and the another 10 to this good squire, because he can speak well of this adventure. And, bringing him riding equipment, with which he was always provided, Roque gave them a written safe conduct for the foremen of his squads, and, bidding farewell to them, he let them go free. One of the squires said, This our captain is more for a fraud than for a bandit, if from now on you want to be liberal, do it with his estate and not with ours. Roque, who, reaching for his sword, split his head almost in 2, telling him, In this way I punish the foul-mouthed and daring. They were all amazed, and none dared say a word to him, such was the obedience they had for him. Roque moved aside and wrote a letter to a friend of his, in Barcelona, informing him that the famous Don Quixote de la Mancha was with him, and that in 4 days' time he would be placed in the middle of the city's beach. He dispatched these letters with one of his squires, who, changing his bandit's outfit into that of a farmer, entered Barcelona and gave it to whomever he was going. Chapter LXI. Of what happened to Don Quixote at the entrance to Barcelona, with other things that are more true than discreet. 3 days and 3 nights Don Quixote was with Roque. Roque spent the nights apart from his family, in parts and places where they could not know where he was, because the many factions that the Viceroy of Barcelona had thrown over his life made him restless and fearful, and he did not dare to trust any of them, fearing that his own would either kill him or hand him over to justice, life, by the way. Miserable and angry. In short, by unusual paths, by shortcuts and hidden paths, Roque, Don Quixote and Sancho set out with 6 other squires for Barcelona. They arrived at his beach on Midsummer's Eve at night. At this, those from the liveries came running, with shouts, lilies and uproar, to where Don Quixote was stunned, and one of them, who was the alerted Roque, said aloud to Don Quixote, Welcome, I mean, the brave Don Quixote de la Mancha. Don Quixote did not answer a word, nor did the knights wait for him to reply, but instead, turning with the others who followed them, they began to make a scrambled snail around Don Quixote. Your worship, Señor Don Quixote, come with us, for we are all his servants and great friends of Roque Guinart. Take me where you want, for I will have no other will than yours, and even more so if you want to use it in your service. Don Quixote and Sancho went up again, with the same applause and music they reached the house of their guide, which was great and principal. Chapter LXII. That treats of the adventure of the enchanted head, with other childish things that cannot be left untold. Don Antonio Moreno was the name of Don Quixote's guest, a rich and discreet gentleman. The first thing he did was to have Don Quixote disarmed and show him off with his narrow and camouflaged dress. That day some of his friends ate with Don Antonio, honoring all and treating Don Quixote as a knight-errant. Sitting at the table, Don Antonio said to Sancho, "Here we have news, good Sancho, that you are so fond of blancmange and meatballs that if you have any left over, you keep them in your bosom for the next day." "No, sir, it's not like that," replied Sancho, "because I'm more clean than sweet-toothed. It is true that, when he is hungry, he seems somewhat gluttonous, because he eats quickly and chews with two cheeks, but cleaning is always on point with him." Don Quixote often recounted the entire success of Sancho's government, with which he greatly delighted his listeners. With the tablecloths raised, and Don Antonio taking Don Quixote by the hand, they entered with him into a secluded room, in which there was nothing else for decoration than a table, apparently made of jasper, which stood on one of the same feet. He held, on which was placed, like the heads of the Roman emperors, from the breasts up, one that seemed to be made of bronze. "Now, Señor Don Quixote, I am aware that no one hears us and is listening, and the door is closed. I want to tell your grace one of the strangest adventures. This head, Mr. Don Quixote, has been made and manufactured by one of the greatest enchanters and sorcerers that the world has ever had, who I believe was a Pole by birth and a disciple of the famous Escadillo. That he has the property and virtue of responding to as many things as they ask him in his ear. And, finally, he brought it out with the perfection that we will see tomorrow, because on Fridays it is silent, and today, which it is, he has to make us wait until tomorrow." He didn't want to tell her anything other than that he thanked her for having revealed such a great secret to him. They left the room, Don Antonio locked the door, and went into the living room. That afternoon they took Don Quixote out for a walk, not armed, but in a parade, dressed in a tawny cloth sloop. They put the sloop on him, and on his back, without his seeing it, they sewed a piece of parchment on which they wrote in large letters, "This is Don Quixote de la Mancha." Don Quixote was amazed to see that everyone who looked at him named and knew him. Great is the prerogative that errant chivalry contains within itself, since it makes the one who professes it known and famous throughout all the ends of the earth. A Castilian who read the label on the back raised his voice, saying, "The devil take care of Don Quixote de la Mancha. How come you've come this far, without having killed the infinite sticks you have on your back? You are crazy, and if you were alone and inside the doors of your madness, it would be less bad, but you have the property of driving crazy and foolish those who treat you and communicate with you. If not, look at it for these gentlemen who accompany you. Go back, stupid, to your house, and look at your property, your wife, and your children, and leave these empty things that eat away at your brain and skim your understanding." "Brother," Don Antonio said, "go your way, and don't give advice to someone who doesn't ask for it. Mr. Don Quixote de la Mancha is very sane, and we who accompany him are not fools. Virtue must be honored wherever it is found, and walk in bad times, and do not get involved where you are not called." "Pardies, your worship is right," replied the Castilian, "that to advise this good man is to kick against the goad, but, with all that, it gives me great pity that the good ingenuity that they say this fool has in all things is drained from him by the channel of his cavalry errantry." The councillor moved away, the ride went on. Night came, they returned home, there was a ladies' soiree. Among the ladies there were two of mischievous and mocking taste, and, to be very honest, they were somewhat deranged, for giving room for teasing to cheer up without anger. They were in such a hurry to get Don Quixote to dance that they crushed not only his body, but also his soul. The damsels demanded of him as if by theft, and he, also as if by theft, disdained them, but, seeing himself clenched in compliments, he raised his voice and said, "Fugit, adversaries parties. Leave me in my peace, evil thoughts. There you go, ladies, with your wishes, that the one who is queen of mine, the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso, does not allow anyone other than hers to subjugate me and surrender." And, saying this, he sat down in the middle of the room, on the floor, bruised and broken from so much dancing exercise. He had Don Antonio carry him by weight to his bed. Another day it seemed to Don Antonio that it would be good to experience the enchanted head, and with Don Quixote, Sancho, and two other friends, with the two ladies who had beaten Don Quixote at the ball. The first to reach the head's ear was Don Antonio himself. "Tell me, head, by the virtue that is enclosed in you, what thoughts do I have now?" And his head answered her, without moving his lips, "I don't judge thoughts. How many of us are here?" Don Antonio asked again. "You and your wife are here, with two of your friends, and two of her friends, and a famous knight named Don Quixote de la Mancha, and his squire named Sancho Panza." The first one to arrive was one of the two friends of Don Antonio's wife, and what he asked her was, "Tell me, head, what will I do to be very beautiful? Be very honest." Then her companion arrived, and she said, "I would like to know, head, if my husband loves me or not. Look at the works he does for you, and you must see him cast out." Then one of Don Antonio's two friends arrived, "Who am I? You know it?" And, moving away, The other friend came and asked him, "Tell me, head, what wishes does my son, the mayor's have?" "I've already said," they replied, "that I don't judge desires, but, with all that, I can tell you that the ones your son has are to bury you." Don Antonio's wife arrived, and she said, "I would only like to know from you if I will enjoy many years of being a good husband." "Yes, you will enjoy it, because his health and his temperance in living promise many years of life, which many tend to shorten due to his lack of temper." Then Don Quixote arrived and said, "Tell me, the one who answers, was it true or was it a dream what I am saying that happened to me in the cave of Montesinos? Will the lashes of Sancho my squire be true? Will Dulcinea's disenchantment take effect?" As for the cave, they answered, "There is a lot to say, it has everything. Sancho's lashes will go from space, Dulcinea's disenchantment will reach due execution." The last question was, "Sancho, perhaps, head, will I have another government? Will I get out of the narrowness of squire? Will I ever see my wife and children again?" "You will rule in your house, and if you return to her, you will see your wife and your children, and, ceasing to serve, you will cease to be a squire." With this, the questions and answers ended, but the admiration in which everyone was left, except Don Antonio's two friends, who knew about the case, did not end. And so, he says that Don Antonio Moreno, in imitation of another head that he saw in Madrid, made by a printer, made this one in his house, to entertain himself and suspend the ignorant. The head, which looked like a medal and figure of a Roman emperor, and bronze in color, was all hollow, and neither more nor less the table top, the foot of the table was likewise hollow, and all this came to answer to another room that under the room of the head was. In the lower room corresponding to the upper one, the person who had to respond would sit, his mouth glued to the same cannon, so that, like a blowgun, the voice went from top to bottom and from bottom to top, in articulate and clear words. A nephew of Don Antonio, an acute and discreet student, was the respondent. He gave Don Quixote the urge to explore the city on a trowel and on foot, fearing that, if he went on horseback, the boys would chase him, and so he and Sancho, with two other servants that Don Antonio had given him, went out for a walk. It happened, then, that, going down a street, Don Quixote raised his eyes and saw written on a door, in very large letters, "Books are printed here." He entered inside, with all his accompaniment, and saw printing in one part, correcting in another, composing in this one, amending in that one, and, finally, all that machine that is shown in the big printing presses. He came in another to one, and asked him what he was doing. The officer replied, "Sir, this gentleman who is here has translated a Tuscan book into our Spanish language, and I am composing it, to give it a print." With all this, it seems to me that translating from one language into another, except for the queens of languages, Greek and Latin, is like someone looking at the Flemish tapestries from the reverse, that, although the figures are seen, they are full of threads that darken them, and they are not seen with the smoothness and complexion of the bundle, and the translator of easy languages, neither argues ingenuity nor elocution, as neither the one who translates nor the one who copies a paper from another paper argues. "I do not print my books to achieve fame in the world, since I am already known there for my works. I want profit, because without it good fame is not worth a penny." He passed by and saw that they were correcting another book as well, and, asking its title, they answered that it was called the second part of the ingenious Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha, composed by a certain resident of Tordesillas. "I already have news of this book," said Don Quixote, "and in truth and in my conscience I thought it was already burned and dusted, for being impertinent, but his Saint Martin will come to him, like every pig, that fake stories are as good and delightful as they come to the truth or the likeness of it, and the true ones are all the better the more true they are." And, saying this, with signs of some spite, he left the printing press. And that same day he ordered Don Antonio to take him to see the galleys that were on the beach, in which Sancho rejoiced greatly, because he had never seen them in his life. Chapter the 8th. Of how bad it happened to Sancho Panza with the visit of the galleys, and the new adventure of the beautiful Moorish. Great were the speeches that Don Quixote made about the response of the enchanted head, without any of them giving in to the lie, and all of them ended with the promise, which he certainly had, of Dulcinea's disenchantment. And Sancho, though he abhorred being governor, as has been said, still wished to command again and to be obeyed, that this misfortune brings command, even if it is mockery. Ultimately, that afternoon Don Antonio Moreno, his guest, and his two friends, with Don Quixote and Sancho, went to the galleys. The general, who by this name we will call him, shook hands with him, who was a leading Valencian gentleman. He embraced Don Quixote, telling him, "I will mark this day with a white stone, as it is one of the best that I plan to experience in my life, having seen Don Quixote de la Mancha." They all entered the stern, which was very well dressed, and sat down by the bandines. The committee passed in the corridor, and signaled with his whistle that the mob put out clothes, which was done in an instant. Sancho, who saw so many people naked, was stunned, and even more so when he saw the tents being set up in such a hurry. Sancho was seated on the shelf, next to the espalier of the right hand, which, already warned of what he had to do, seized Sancho, and, raising him in his arms, all the mob stood up and alert, starting from the right band, he was giving him and turning over the arms of the rabble from bench to bench, with such haste, that poor Sancho lost the sight of his eyes, and without a doubt he thought that the same demons were carrying him, and they did not stop with him until return him by the sinister band and put him in the stern. Don Quixote, who saw Sancho's flight without wings, asked the general if those were ceremonies that were used with the first to enter the galleys, because if it were, he, who had no intention of professing in them, if someone managed to grab him to turn him over, he would have to take out his soul with a knife, and, saying this, he rose to his feet and took up his sword. At this instant they knocked down the tent, and with a great noise they let the tenna fall from high to low. And all this, silent, as if they had no voice or breath. He signalled to the comiter that they set sail for the iron, and, jumping in the middle of the corridor with the corbaco or whip, began to snap the backs of the mob, and to go little by little to the sea. When Sancho saw one move so many red feet, such as he thought the oars were, he said among himself, "These are truly enchanted things, and not the ones my master says." Said the sailor, "Monjui is signalling that there is a vessel with oars on the coast on the west side." Hearing this, the general jumped into the gallery and said, "Come on, children, don't leave us. Some brigantine of Cosarios from Algiers must be this one that the watchtower points out to us." Then the other 3 galleys arrived at the Capitana, who knew what they were ordered. The general ordered the 2 to go out to sea, and he would go from land to land with the other, because that way the vessel would not escape from them. He tightened the oars on the rabble, propelling the galleys with such fury, they seemed to fly. Those who went out to sea, after 2 miles, discovered a vessel, which they marked with up to 14 or 15 banks with their eyes, and that was the truth, which ship, when he discovered the galleys, set out to chase, with the intention and hope of escaping by his swiftness, but he was wrong, because the captain's galley was one of the lightest vessels that sailed in the sea, and that's how it entered her, that clearly those of the brigantine knew that they could not escape, and so, the Ares wanted them to drop their oars and surrender, so as not to irritate the captain who commanded our galleys to anger. But luck, which otherwise guided him, ordered that, since the captain was so close that those on the ship could hear the voices from her telling them to surrender, 2 Torquis, which is like saying 2 drunken Turks, that in the brigantine they came with these 12, they fired 2 shotguns, with which they killed 2 soldiers who came on top of us. Seeing this, the general swore not to leave alive all those in the vessel he took, and, coming to charge with all fury, it escaped under the Parliament. He passed the galley ahead a long way, those on the vessel were lost, the Capitana overtaking them a little more than half a mile away, he threw the Palamenta on top of them and caught them all alive. In this the other 2 galleys arrived, and all 4 with the prey returned to the beach. He ordered the skiff to be put out to bring him, and he ordered the boat to slow down to hang the Ares and the other Turks that he had taken on the vessel, which would have been up to 36 people. The general asked who was the captain of the brigantine. "Tell me, ill-advised dog, who moved you to kill my soldiers, since you saw escape as impossible? Is that respect reserved for the captains? Don't you know that recklessness is not bravery? Doubtful hopes must make men bold, but not reckless." Reply wanted the Ares, but the general could not, at that time, hear the answer, because he went to receive the viceroy. "And so good," answered the general, "that your excellency will now see it hanging from this Antana." "In that way?" the viceroy replied. "Because they have killed me," replied the general, "against all law and against all reason and customs of war." The viceroy looked at him, and, seeing him so handsome, and so gallant, and so humble, giving him a letter of recommendation at that moment, his beauty, he wanted to excuse his death, and so he asked her, "Well, what are you?" The viceroy replied, "Woman and Christian, and in such a dress and in such steps. It is more a thing to admire than to believe." "Suspend," said the young man, "O gentlemen, the execution of my death, for not much will be lost in delaying your vengeance as long as I tell you my life." The young man began to say in this way, "Of that nation more unfortunate than prudent, upon whom a sea of misfortunes has reigned these days, I was born, engendered by Moorish parents. In the current of her misfortune I was taken to Barbary by 2 of my uncles, without it profiting me to say that she was a Christian. It was not worth it for me, with those who were in charge of our miserable exile, to tell this truth, nor did my uncles want to believe it, before her, they thought it was a lie and an invention to keep me in the land where she was born, and thus, by force rather than by degree, they brought me with them. I had a Christian mother and a discreet and Christian father. My beauty grew, if I have any, and, although my modesty and my confinement was great, it must not have been so much that a young gentleman named Don Gaspar Gregorio did not have room to see me. How he saw me, how we talked to each other, how he saw himself lost by me and how I was not very won over by him. And so, I will only say how Don Gregorio wanted to accompany me in our exile. He mixed with the Moriscos who came from other places, because he knew the language very well, and on the trip he made friends with 2 of my uncles who brought me with them. Because my father, prudent and aware, just as the first edict of our exile heard, he left the place and went looking for someone in the foreign kingdoms who would welcome us. He left locked up and buried, in a part of which I alone have news, many pearls and stones of great value, with some money in gold crusaders and doubloons. He ordered me not to touch the treasure that he left in any way, in case, before he returned, they banished us. I did it like this, and with my uncles, as I have said, and other relatives and acquaintances we went to Barbary. The king heard of my beauty, and fame was given to him of my riches, He called me before him, asked me what part of Spain I was from and what money and what jewels I brought. I told him the place, and that the jewels and money were buried there, but that they could easily be collected if I returned for them myself. I told him all this, fearful that he would not blind him to my beauty, but to his greed. Being with me in these talks, they even told him how one of the most gallant and beautiful youths that could be imagined was coming with me. Then I understood that they were saying it for Don Gaspar Gregorio. Then the king ordered that they be brought before him to see him, and he asked me if what they told him about that young man was true. Then I, almost as warned from heaven, told him that he was, but that I let her know that she was not a man, but a woman like me, and that I begged her to let me go dress her in her natural dress, so that in all things she could show her beauty and with less embarrassment she would appear before her presence. I spoke with Don Gaspar, I told him about the danger of showing that I was a man, I dressed him as a blackberry, and that same afternoon I brought him to the presence of the king, who, seeing him, was amazed and made a plan to keep it to make a present of it to the great lord. And, to flee from the danger that in the seraglio his women could have and fear from himself, he had her put in the house of some main Moorish women who would guard and serve her. Then the king arranged for me to return to Spain in this brigantine and to accompany me with 2 Turks from the nation, who were the ones who killed your soldiers. The rest of the rabble on the brig are Moors and Turks, who serve no more than rowing. In short, Don Gregorio remains in the habit of a woman among women, with manifest danger of being lost, and I see my hands tied, waiting, or, to put it better, fearing to lose my life, which already tires me. The viceroy, tender and compassionate, without speaking a word about her, went over to her and with his hands removed the string that the beautiful Moorish women tied to her. While the Moorish Christian was dealing with her pilgrim history, an old pilgrim who entered the galley when the viceroy entered, had his eyes fixed on her. "Oh Ana Felix, my unfortunate daughter! I am your father Ricote, who came back to look for you for not being able to live without you, who are my soul." At whose words Sancho opened his eyes, and raised his head, which he had bowed, thinking of the misfortune of his walk, and, looking at the pilgrim, he knew that he was the same Ricote that he met the day he left his government, and confirmed that that was his daughter. "This, gentlemen, is my daughter. I left my country to look for someone in foreign kingdoms who would shelter and welcome us, and, having found him in Germany, I returned in this pilgrim's habit, in the company of other Germans, to look for my daughter and unearth many riches that I left hidden. I did not find my daughter, I found the treasure that I bring with me, and now, by the strange detour that you have seen, I have found the treasure that enriches me the most, which is my dear daughter. If our little guilt and her tears and mine, for the integrity of your justice, can open doors to mercy, use it with us, who never thought of offending you." Then Sancho said, "I know Ricote well, and I know that what he says about Ana Felix being his daughter is true, that in those other trifles of coming and going, having good or bad intentions, I don't interfere." The general said, "One by one your tears will not let me fulfill my oath. Live, beautiful Ana Felix, the years of life that heaven has determined for you, and bear the penalty of her guilt for the insolent and daring who committed it." And he then ordered to hang the 2 Turks who had killed 2 of his soldiers, but the viceroy earnestly begged him not to hang them, since he had been more mad than brave. The general did what the viceroy asked of him, because cold-blooded revenge is not carried out well. They then tried to plan to get Don Gaspar Gregorio out of the danger in which he was left. He offered Ricote for it more than 2,000 ducats that he had in pearls and jewels. Many means were given, but none was such as the one given by the renegade Spanish that has been said, who offered to return to Algiers in some small boat, with up to 6 benches, armed with Christian oarsmen, because he knew where, how and when he could and should disembark, and likewise he was not unaware of the house where Don Gaspar was staying. The general and the viceroy hesitated to trust the renegade, nor to trust the Christians who were to row the oar. Ana Felix told him, and Ricote, her father, said that he was going out to rescue the Christians, in case they got lost. Signed, then, in this opinion, the viceroy disembarked, and Don Antonio Moreno took with him the Moorish woman and her father. Chapter LXIV. Which deals with the adventure that gave Don Quixote the most grief of all those that had happened to him up to that time. Don Antonio Moreno's wife tells the story that he was very happy to see Ana Felix in her house. Don Quixote told Don Antonio that the opinion they had taken on Don Gregorio's freedom was not good, because it was more dangerous than convenient, and that it would be better if they put him in Barbary with his arms and horse, that he would take her out despite all the Moors, as Don Gayferos had done to his wife Melisendra. 2 days later the renegade set out in a light ship with 6 oars on each side, armed with the most valiant rabble. And one morning, when Don Quixote was going out to walk along the beach armed with all his weapons, he saw a knight coming towards him, also armed to the nines. "I have come to contend with you and to test the strength of your arms, in order to make you known and confess that my lady, whoever she may be, she is without comparison more beautiful than your Dulcinea del Toboso. Which truth if you confess it flatly, you will excuse your death and the work that I have to take in giving it to you, and if you fight and I defeat you, I do not want any other satisfaction than that, laying down your arms and refraining from seeking adventures, you collect yourself and retire to your place for a year, where you will live without taking up the sword, in quiet peace and profitable calm, because it suits the increase of your property and the salvation of your soul, and if you defeat me, my head will remain at your discretion, and the spoils of my weapons and horse will be yours, and the fame of my deeds will pass to yours. Knight of the White Moon, I will dare to swear that you have never seen the illustrious Dulcinea, I accept your challenge, and then, because the day that you have determined does not pass." The viceroy approached Don Antonio and asked him if he knew who this Knight of the White Moon was, or if it was some trick they wanted to play on Don Quixote. Don Antonio replied that he didn't even know who he was, or if he was joking or really such a challenge. "Gentlemen, if there is no other remedy here but to confess or die, come on." And, without blowing a trumpet or any other instrument of war that would give them a signal to attack, they both returned the reins to their horses at the same point, and, as that of the White Moon was lighter, it reached Don Quixote 2/3 of the way, and there it found him with such powerful force, without touching him with the lance, which he raised, apparently, on purpose, which gave Rocinante and Don Quixote a dangerous fall on the ground. Then he went over to him, and, putting his lance on his visor, he said, "You are defeated, knight, and even dead, if you do not confess the conditions of our challenge. Dulcinea del Toboso is the most beautiful woman in the world, and I am the most unfortunate gentleman on earth, and it is not good that my weakness deceives this truth. Squeeze the lance, knight, and take my life, for you have taken away my honor." "I won't do that, for I am content only with the great Don Quixote retiring to his place for a year, or until such time as I command him." Likewise, Don Quixote replied that as long as he did not ask him for anything that would be detrimental to Dulcinea, he would fulfill everything else as a punctual and true knight. This confession made, the White Moon man turned the reins, and, nodding to the viceroy, he entered the city at a canter. They raised Don Quixote, uncovered his face, and found him colorless and sweating. Finally, with a sedan chair, which he had the viceroy bring, he was carried into the city, and the viceroy turned to her, too, wanting to know who the Knight of the White Moon was. Chapter LXV. Where the news is given who was the White Moon, with the freedom of Don Gregorio, and other events. Don Antonio Moreno followed the Knight of the White Moon, until they closed him in an inn within the city. He told him, "You know, sir, that they call me the bachelor Sanson Carrasco. I am from the same place as Don Quixote de la Mancha, whose madness and nonsense moves all of us who know him to feel sorry for him, and among those who have felt it the most I have been, and, believing that his health is in his rest and that he is in his land and in his house, I gave plans to make him stay in it. And so, there will be 3 months that I went out on the road as a knight-errant, calling myself the Knight of Mirrors, with the intention of fighting him and defeating him, without harming him, making it a condition of our fight that the defeated remain at the discretion of the winner, and what I thought of asking him, because I already thought he had given up, was that he return to his place and not leave it for a whole year, in which time he could be cured, but fate ordained it differently. Because he defeated me and knocked me off my horse, and so my thought had no effect, he continued on his way, and I turned back, defeated, run and bruised from the fall, which it was also dangerous, but this did not take away my desire to return to look for him and defeat him, as has been seen today. And since he is so punctual in keeping the orders of the knight-errant, he will doubtless keep the one I have given him, keeping his word. I beg you not to discover me or tell Don Quixote who I am, so that my good thoughts may have an effect and a man who thinks he is extremely good will come to his senses again, as the nonsense of chivalry will allow him." "Oh sir," said Don Antonio, "God forgive you for the offense you have done to the whole world in wanting to make the funniest madman in insane. Don't you see, sir, that the benefit that Don Quixote's sanity causes cannot reach the pleasure that he gives with his madness? But I imagine that all of Mr. Bachelor's industry does not have to be part of making such a completely crazy man sane, and if it were not against charity, I would say that Don Quixote would never heal, because with his health, we not only lose his graces, but those of Sancho Panza. With all this, I will keep quiet, and I will not say anything to him, to see if I come out true in suspecting that the diligence carried out by Mr. Carrasco will have no effect. Then at the same point, on the horse with which he entered the battle, he left the city that same day and returned to his homeland. Don Antonio told the viceroy everything that Carrasco had told him, which the viceroy did not receive much pleasure from, because in Don Quixote's recollection all those who knew of his follies were lost. 6 days Don Quixote was in bed, married, sad, pensive and ill-conditioned. Sancho consoled him, and, among other reasons, he told him, "Let's go back to our house and stop looking for adventures through lands and places we don't know. I, who left with the government the desire to be more governor, did not give up the desire to be a count, which will never have an effect if your grace ceases to be king, leaving the exercise of chivalry to him, and so my hopes go up in smoke. Shut up, Sancho, because you see that my seclusion and withdrawal will not exceed a year, that later I will return to my honest exercises, and I will not lack a kingdom to win and some county to give you." "God hear him," said Sancho, "and sin be deaf, for I have always heard it said that a good hope is better than a vile possession." They were at this point when Don Antonio entered, saying with signs of great contentment, "Good luck, Señor Don Quixote." Don Gregorio and the renegade who came for him are on the beach. "What do I say on the beach? He is already at the viceroy's house, and he will be here in a moment." Quixote and his daughter came out to greet him, the father with tears and the daughter with honesty. The two beauties together, Don Gregorio and Ana Felix, particularly admired all those who were present. The renegade recounted the industry and means he had to get Don Gregorio out. He told Don Gregorio about the dangers and troubles in which he had been with the women with whom he had stayed. Finally, Quixote paid and liberally satisfied both the renegade and those who had rowed. 2 days later, the viceroy discussed with Don Antonio what way they would have for Ana Felix and her father to remain in Spain. "One by one, I'll do the possible errands, standing there, and heaven do what's best for you," Don Antonio said. "Don Gregorio will go with me to console the sorrow that his parents must have for his absence, Ana Felix will stay with my wife in my house, or in a monastery, and I know that the viceroy will like it if good Quixote stays in his, until he sees how I do business." Ana Felix remained with Don Antonio's wife, and Quixote at the viceroy's house. The day of Don Antonio's departure arrived, and that of Don Quixote and Sancho, who went from there to 2 others, that the fall did not allow him to get on his way sooner. There were tears, there were sighs, fainting spells and sobs as Don Gregorio said goodbye to Ana Felix. Quixote offered Don Gregorio 1,000 crowns, if he wanted them, but he did not take any, but only 5 that Don Antonio lent him, promising to pay them at court. With this, the two parted, and Don Quixote and Sancho afterwards, as has been said, Don Quixote unarmed and on his way, Sancho on foot, because the dapple went loaded with weapons. Chapter LXVI. That deals with what the one who reads it will see, or the one who will hear it read will hear it. Leaving Barcelona, Don Quixote returned to look at the place where he had fallen, and said, "Here was Troy. Here my misfortune, and not my cowardice, took away my achieved glories. Here he used fortune with me from the twists and turns of it. Here my deeds were darkened. Here, finally, my fortune fell to never get up." Sancho said, "It is so valiant of hearts, my lord, to have suffering in misfortunes as joy in prosperity, and this I judge for myself, that if when I was governor I was happy, now that I am a foot squire, I am not sad, because I have heard that this woman they call Fortuna is a drunken and capricious woman, and, above all, blind, and thus, she does not see what she does, nor does she know who she knocks down, or who she praises. What I can tell you is that there is no fortune in the world, nor do the things that happen in it, good or bad, come perhaps, but by particular providence of heaven, and from here comes what is usually said, that each one is the architect of his fortune. I have been of mine, but not with the necessary prudence, and thus, my presumptions have come to the fore. Well, he should think that the powerful size of the horse of the White Moon could not resist the weakness of Rocinante. Finally, I did what I could, they shot me down, and, although I lost my honor, I did not lose, nor can I lose, the virtue of keeping my word." "Sir," replied Sancho, "let us leave these weapons hanging from some tree, instead of a hanged man, and, occupying the back of the dapple, raising his feet from the ground, we will do the days as your grace requests and measures them, that to think that I have to walk on foot and make them big is to think about what is excused. Hang my arms as a trophy, and at the foot of them, or around them, we will engrave on the trees what was written on the trophy of Roldan's arms, nobody moves them who cannot put Roldan on trial." Continuing on their way, they saw that a man on foot was coming towards them, with saddlebags around his neck and an ascona or chuzo in his hand. As he arrived next to Don Quixote, he said to him, "O my lord Don Quixote de la Mancha, and what great joy must come to the heart of my lord the Duke when he learns that your grace is returning to your castle, that you are still there with my lady the Duchess. I am Tozelos, the Duke's lackey, my lord, who did not want to fight with your grace over the marriage of Dona Rodriguez's daughter. Good God! Don Quixote said. Is it possible that you are the one that my enchanting enemies transformed into that lackey you say, for defrauding me of the honor of that battle? Shut up, good sir, replied the postman, there was no charm or change of face, as Tozello's lackey I entered the stockade, as Tozello's lackey I came out of it. I thought of marrying without a fight, because the girl seemed good to me, but my thoughts turned upside down, because, just as your worship left our castle, my lord the duke made me beat 100 times for having contravened the ordinances that he had for me given before entering the battle, and everything has stopped in that the girl is already a nun, and Dona Rodriguez has returned to Castile, and I am now going to Barcelona, to take a list of letters to the viceroy, which my master sends him. In short, said Don Quixote, you are, Sancho, the greatest ignorant man on earth, because you are not persuaded that this courier is enchanted, and this Tozello's is distorted. Stay with him and get fed up, I'll go ahead little by little, waiting for you to come. Tozello said to Sancho. Without a doubt, this master of yours, Sancho my friend, must be a madman. How should he? Sancho replied. He owes nothing to anyone, he pays for everything, especially when the currency is crazy. I see it well, and I say it well to him, but what profit? And more now that he is finished off, because he is defeated by the Knight of the White Moon. Getting up, after having shaken off his tunic and the crumbs from his beard, he went before the dapple, and, saying to God, left Tozello's and reached his mistress, who was waiting for him in the shade of a tree. Chapter LXI. Of the resolution that Don Quixote took to become a shepherd and continue the life of the country, while the year of his promise was spent, with other truly pleasant and good events. If many thoughts tired Don Quixote before he was knocked down, many more tired him after he fell. Sancho arrived and praised the liberal condition of the lackey Tozello's. Is it possible, Don Quixote said to him, that you still think, O Sancho, that he is a true lackey? It seems that it has gone out of your mind to have seen Dulcinea converted and transformed into a farmer, and the Knight of the Mirrors in the Carrasco bachelor, all works of the enchanters who persecute me. But, of those I have from Dulcinea, whom you offend with the remission you have in whipping yourself and punishing those meats, let me see the food of wolves, who want to save themselves for the worms rather than for the medicine of that poor lady. Sir, answered Sancho, if you are going to tell the truth, I cannot persuade myself that the whipping of my buttocks has anything to do with the disenchantments of the enchanted, which is as if we were saying, if your head hurts, rub your hands knees. I will give them to myself, when I feel like it and the time gives me comfort to punish myself. May God do it, replied Don Quixote, and the heavens give you grace so that you realize it and your obligation to help my lady, who is yours, since you are mine. They arrived at the same place where they were run over by the bulls. Don Quixote recognized him, he said to Sancho, this is the meadow where we ran into the bizarre shepherdesses and dashing shepherds who wanted to renew and imitate the pastoral Arcadia in it, a thought as new as it was discreet, whose imitation, if it's all right with you, I would like to imitate. O Sancho, that we become shepherds, even as long as I have to be collected. I will buy some sheep, and all the other things that are necessary for the pastoral exercise, and calling myself Pastor Quixote, and you Pastor Pansino, we will walk through the mountains, through the jungles and through the meadows. Parties, said Sancho, that such a kind of life has squared me, and even cornered it. The shepherdesses of whom we must be lovers, as among peers we will be able to choose their names, and, since my lady's suit matches that of a shepherdess as well as that of a princess, there is no reason for me to get tired of looking for another one that better suits her. You, Sancho, you will put to yours the one you want. I don't think, replied Sancho, to put any other than Tirzanoz, which will come in handy with her fatness and with the one she has. I will complain of absence, you will praise yourself firmly in love, the shepherd Carrascan, of scorned, and the priest Curiambro, of what he can use the most, and thus, the thing that there is nothing more to desire will happen. I am, sir, so wretched that I fear the day will not come when I will see myself in such an exercise. They retired, they dined late and badly, and so, that one spent sleeping, and I love her keeping awake. Chapter LXVIII. Of the piggy adventure that befell Don Quixote. Don Quixote's men kept him awake so that he woke up Sancho and said to him, I am amazed, Sancho, at the freedom of your condition. I imagine that you are made of marble, or of hard bronze, in which there is no room for movement or any feeling. I watch when you sleep, I cry when you sing, I faint from fasting when you are lazy and discouraged from being fed up. Get up, for your life, and deviate some distance from here, and with good courage and grateful boldness give yourself 300 or 400 lashes at a good account of those of Dulcinea's disenchantment. After you have given yourself, we will spend the rest of the night singing, I my absence and you your firmness, giving from now on the pastoral exercise that we must have in our village. Sir, replied Sancho, I'm not religious so that from the middle of my sleep I get up and discipline myself, nor does it seem to me that the extreme pain of the whipping can pass to that of the music. Your mercy, let me sleep and don't bother me about whipping me, that will make me swear never to touch the hair of my coat, not that of my flesh. In this they were, when they heard a dull rumble and a rough noise, which spread through all those valleys. It is, then, the case that some men were taking more than 600 pigs to sell at a fair, with which they were walking at that time. The outstretched and growling herd arrived in droves, and, having no respect for the authority of Don Quixote, nor that of Sancho, they passed over both of them, undoing Sancho's trenches, and knocking down not only Don Quixote, but carrying in addition to Rocinante. Sancho got up as best he could, and asked his master for his sword, telling him that he wanted to kill half a dozen of those gentlemen and unruly pigs, whom he had already known to be so. Don Quixote told him, "Let them be, friend, this affront is the penalty for my sin, and the just punishment from heaven is that a defeated knight-errant be eaten by atavas, and be stung by wasps and trampled by pigs." The day came at this, the sun struck Sancho with rays in his eyes, he woke up and waited, shaking and stretching his lazy limbs. Finally, the two of them returned to their started path, and at the end of the afternoon they saw that up to 10 men on horseback and 4 or 5 on foot were coming towards them. Don Quixote's heart was startled and Sancho's was terrified, because the people who approached them brought spears and shields and came very ready for war. Don Quixote turned to Sancho and said, "If I could, Sancho, exercise my weapons, and my promise had not tied my arms, I would have had this machine that is coming upon us for cakes and painted bread, but it could be if it were another thing we fear." At this, the horsemen arrived, and brandishing their lances, without speaking a word, surrounded Don Quixote and placed them on his back and chest, threatening him with death. One of those on foot, putting a finger to his mouth as a sign for him to be quiet, grabbed Rocinante's brake and pulled him out of the way, and the others on foot, ahead of Sancho and the Dapple, all keeping marvelous silence, followed in the footsteps of the one who was carrying Don Quixote, who 2 or 3 times wanted to ask where they were taking him or what they wanted, but, he barely began to move his lips, when they were going to close them with the irons of the spears. The night closed, they quickened their pace, fear grew in the 2 prisoners. At this time, almost 1 hour at night, they arrived at a castle that Don Quixote knew well, that it was the Duke's, where there had been little that they had been. "Good God!" he said, just as he knew the room. "And what will this be?" "Yes, in this house everything is courtesy and good manners, but for the vanquished, good turns to evil and evil to worse." They entered the main courtyard of the castle, and saw him decorated and placed in a manner that increased their admiration and doubled their fear. Chapter LXIX. Of the rarest and newest event that in the entire discourse of this great history happened to Don Quixote. They were brought into the courtyard, around which almost 100 axes burned. In the middle of the patio a tumulus rose about 2 yards from the ground, all covered with a huge canopy of black velvet, around which, on its steps, white wax candles burned on more than 100 silver candlesticks, upon which burial mound was shown a dead body of such a fair maiden. She had her head on a brocade pillow, crowned with a woven garland of diverse and fragrant flowers, her hands crossed over her breast, and, between them, a bouquet of yellow and victorious palm. On one side of the courtyard was a theatre, and 2 characters sat on 2 chairs, who gave signs of being some kings, whether real or feigned. Next to this theatre, where one went up some steps, were 2 other chairs, on which those who brought the prisoners seated Don Quixote and Sancho. In this, they went up to the theatre, with much accompaniment, 2 main characters, who were later known to Don Quixote to be the Duke and the Duchess. Who would not be amazed at this, adding to this that Don Quixote had known that the dead body that was on the tomb was that of the beautiful Altisidora. He began, in this, to come out, apparently, under the tomb a submissive and pleasant sound of flutes, he sang with a very soft and clear voice these 2 rooms. While Altisidora returns to herself, dead by Don Quixote's cruelty, and while the ladies in peacoat dress in the enchanting court. "No more," said one of the 2 who seemed to be kings at this point, "no more, divine singer, that it would be proceeding in infinity to represent to us now the death and graces of the peerless Altisidora. Not dead, as the ignorant world thinks, but alive in the tongues of fame, and in the pain that Sancho Panza, who is present, must go through to return her to the lost light, and so. O you, Rhadamanthus, who judges with me in the gloomy caverns of light. Well, you know everything that in the inscrutable fates is determined about this maiden coming to her senses, say it and declare it later, because the good that with your new turn we look forward to." Hardly had Minos, judge and companion of Rhadamanthus, said this, when, rising to his feet, Rhadamanthus said, seal Sancho's face with 24 suckers, and 12 pinches and 6 pinpricks on the arms and loins, which in this ceremony consists of Altisidora's health." Hearing this, Sancho Panza broke the silence and said, "I vote for such, even if I let my face be sealed or my face touched like I'd become a Moor. Body of me. Those jokes, to a brother-in-law, that I am an old dog, and there is no me, you will die." Rhadamanthus said loudly. Soften up, tiger, humble yourself, proud Nembrot, and suffer and be silent, because they don't ask you for the impossible. And do not get involved in finding out the difficulties of this business. It seemed, in this, that up to 6 duennas were coming through the patio in procession. Sancho said, I could very well let myself be pawed by everyone, but I won't allow the owners to touch me. Crawl across my face, as you did my master in this very castle, pierce my body with sharp dagger points, they bind my arms with pincers of fire, and I will bear them patiently, or I will serve these gentlemen, but that they touch me duennas I will not consent, if the devil takes me. Don Quixote, saying to Sancho, be patient, son, and please these gentlemen, and many thanks to heaven for having placed such virtue in your person, that with her martyrdom you disenchant the enchanted and resurrect the dead. Finally, all the duennas sealed him, and many other people from the house pinched him, but what he could not suffer was the puncture of the pins, and so, he got up from his chair, apparently sullen, and, seizing a burning axe that was next to him, he went after the duennas, and after all his executioners. At this, Altisidora, who must have been tired from being supine for so long, turned on her side, seeing which by the bystanders, almost all with one voice said, Long live Altisidora! Altisidora lives? Rhadamanthus ordered Sancho to lay down his anger, since the attempt he was seeking had already been achieved. Just as Don Quixote saw Altisidora stir, he went to kneel in front of Sancho, telling him, Now is the time, son of my heart, not my squire, that you give yourself some of the lashes you are obliged to give for him. Dulcinea's disenchantment. Now, I say, that is the time when you have seasoned virtue, and with efficiency to do the good that is expected of you. To which Sancho replied, This seems to me ergadou on argadou, 1036 and not honey on flakes. It would be good if after pinching, sucking, and pinpricks, now came the whipping. Already in this, Altisidora had sat on the tumulus, and at the same instant the sham sounded. The dukes and kings Minos and Rhadamanthus rose, and all together, with Don Quixote and Sancho, went to receive Altisidora and lower her from her tomb. Looking across at Don Quixote, he said to him, God forgive you, heartless knight, because of your cruelty I have been in the other world, in my opinion, for more than 1,000 years, and to you, O the most compassionate squire that the orb contains, I thank you for the life I have. Have more from today, friend Sancho, than 6 of my shirts that I am sending you to make another 6 for you. The Duke ordered the courtyard to be cleared, and everyone to go to their rooms, and Don Quixote and Sancho to be taken to the ones they already knew each other. Chapter LXX. That follows that of 69, and deals with things not excused for the clarity of the story. Sancho slept that night in a stroller. Hardly had his mistress entered the bed when he said, What do you think, Sancho, of the event tonight? Great and powerful is the force of loveless disdain, Altisidora, not with other arrows, nor with another sword, nor with another warlike instrument, nor with deadly poisons, but with the rigor and disdain with which I have always treated her. Let her die in good time as much as she wanted and how she wanted, answered Sancho, and leave me in my house, because I never fell in love with her or disdained her in my life. Now I do come to know clearly and distinctly that there are enchanters and charms in the world. They both fell asleep, and at this time he wanted to write and give an account of Cide Hamet, author of this great story. And so, finding out about the page who brought the letter and presenting Teresa Panza, Sancho's wife, where Don Quixote was staying, he looked for new weapons and a horse, and put the white moon on the shield, carrying everything on a mail, who was guided by a labrador. He arrived, then, at the Duke's castle, who informed him of the path and defeat that Don Quixote was taking, with the intention of being in the justs of Zaragoza. He also told her about the jokes he had made with Dulcinea's disenchantment, which had to be at the expense of Sancho's buttocks. He asked the Duke that if he found him, and whether he defeated him or not, he would return there to give him an account of the event. He went back to the Duke's castle and told him everything, with the conditions of the battle, and that Don Quixote was already fulfilling his word to retire to his village for a year, in which time it could be, said the bachelor, that he recover from his madness. With this, he took leave of the Duke, and returned to his place, waiting there for Don Quixote, who was coming after him. From here the Duke took occasion to make that mockery of him. And Cide Hamet says more, that the mockers have to be as crazy as the mocked, and that the Dukes were not 2 fingers from looking foolish, because they put so much effort into making fun of 2 fools. Which, one sleeping loosely, and the other watching untied thoughts, took the day and the desire to get up. Altisidora in Don Quixote's opinion, returned from death to life, following the humor of his lords. He entered the room of Don Quixote, with whose presence disturbed and confused, he shrunk and covered almost everything with the sheets and bedspreads. He said to her, when the main women and the demure maidens trample for honor, and give license to the tongue that breaks for all inconvenience, giving public notice of the secrets that their hearts contain, they are on a narrow term. I, Mr. Don Quixote de la Mancha, am one of these, pressed, defeated and in love, but, with all this, suffered and honest, so much so that, because it was so much, my soul burst through my silence and I lost my life. And if it were not because love, sympathizing with me, deposited my remedy in the martyrdoms of this good squire, there I would remain in the other world. Love could well, said Sancho, deposit them in my donkeys, for I would be grateful. What did he see in the other world? What's in hell? Because whoever dies desperately has to have that whereabouts. To tell you the truth, replied Altisidora, I should not have died completely, since I did not enter hell, that, if she entered there, one by one she could not leave it, even if she wanted to. The truth is that I got to the door, where up to a dozen devils were playing ball. It was that at the first volley there was no ball left standing, nor useful to serve again, and so, new and old books were numerous, which was wonderful. One of them, brand new and well bound, was given a flip that took out his guts and scattered the pages. He said one devil to another, look what a book that is. And the devil replied, this is the second part of the story of Don Quixote de la Mancha, not composed by Cide Hamet, its first author, but by an Aragonese, who says he was born in Tordesillas. Get him out of there, answered the other devil, and put him in the abysses of hell, let my eyes see him no more. They continued their game, rallying around other books, and I, having heard the name of Don Quixote, whom I adore and love so much, tried to keep this vision in my memory. Vision must have been, without a doubt, said Don Quixote, because there is no other eye in the world, and that story is already going around here from hand to hand, but it doesn't stop at any of them, because everyone gives it their foot. Altisidora was about to continue complaining about Don Quixote, when Don Quixote said to her, many times have I told you, madam, that it pains me that you have placed your thoughts in me, because mine can be thanked rather than remedied, I was born to be from Dulcinea del Toboso. Do you think by any chance, a beaten man, that I have died for you? Everything you have seen tonight has been faked, that I am not a woman who for such camels had to let a black man hurt me from the nail, how much more to die? That's what I think very well, said Sancho, that this business of lovers dying is a matter of laughter, they can say it, but they can do it, believe it, Judas. The Duke and Duchess, who entered to see him, between whom they passed a long and sweet talk. Don Quixote begged them to give him permission to leave that same day, since it was better for defeated knights like him to live in a rookery than in royal palaces. They gave it to her very willingly, and the Duchess asked her if she was in her good graces, Altisidora. He answered her, my lady, your lordship should know that all this maiden's evil stems from idleness, the remedy for which is honest and continuous occupation. And mine, added Sancho, because in all my life I have never seen a Randara die for love, that busy maidens put their thoughts more on finishing their tasks than on thinking about their loves. You speak very well, Sancho, said the Duchess, and I'll make my Altisidora take care of doing some white work from now on, which she knows how to do to the maximum. There's no reason, madam, Altisidora replied, to use that remedy, because the consideration of the cruelties that this monstrous miscreant has used me will erase him from my memory without any other artifice. And, with the permission of your greatness, I want to get out of here, so as not to see before my eyes no longer her sad figure, but her ugly and abominable appearance. The conversation ended, Don Quixote dressed, ate with the dukes, and left that afternoon. Chapter LXXI. Of what happened to Don Quixote with his squire Sancho going to his village. The vanquished and disheveled Don Quixote went along, pensive on the one hand, and very happy on the other. Sancho wasn't happy at all, because he was sad to see that Altisidora hadn't kept her word about giving him the shirts, and, coming and going in this. Truly, sir, I am the most wretched doctor to be found in the world. Well, I vote them so that if they bring another sick person to my hands, that, before I cure him, they have to anoint me with mine. You are right, Sancho my friend, responded Don Quixote, and Altisidora did very badly in not having given you her promised shirts. I can tell you about myself that if you wanted payment for the whipping of Dulcinea's disenchantment, she would have already given it to you as good, but I don't know if she will come in handy with her cure, her pay, and I wouldn't want her to prevent the prize for medicine. With all that, it seems to me that nothing will be lost in proving it. Look, Sancho, the one you want, and whip yourself later, and pay yourself in cash and with your own hand, since you have my money. How much will you give me for each spank you give me? Take your time what you have mine, and put the price to each whip. They are all 825 reis. These I will embezzle from those I have of your mercy, and I will enter my house rich and happy, although well flogged, because they don't take trout, and I won't say more. Oh bless Sancho! Oh kind Sancho, responded Don Quixote, and how obliged Dulcinea and I must be to serve you every day that heaven gives us life. And look, Sancho, when do you want to start the discipline, because you shorten it I'll add 100 reis. When? Sancho replied. Tonight, without fail. Finally, they entered among some pleasant trees that were a little deviated from the path. Sancho withdrew up to 20 paces from his master, among some beeches. Don Quixote told him, "Look, friend, I mean don't get so tough that you lose your life before reaching the desired number." "The good payer does not hurt garments," replied Sancho, "I plan to give myself in such a way that, without killing me, it hurts me, that this must be the substance of this miracle." He then undressed from halfway up, and, snatching the cord, began to give himself, and Don Quixote began to count the lashes. Sancho would have given himself up to 6 or 8, when it seemed to him that the mockery was heavy and the price of it very cheap, and, pausing a little, he told his master that he was being deceived, because each whip of those deserved to be paid half a real. "Not that a quart." "Go on, friend Sancho, and don't lose heart," Don Quixote told him, "for I double the price." "In any case," said Sancho, "at the hand of God, and let it rain lashes." But the cunning stopped giving them on the back, and hit the trees, with a few sighs from time to time. Sancho returned to his task with such determination that he had already stripped the bark from many trees. "Do not allow fate, Sancho my friend, that for my pleasure you lose your life, which will serve to sustain your wife and children. Dulcinea wait for a better situation, so that this business can be concluded to everyone's liking." He sheltered Sancho, who slept until the sun woke him up, and then they continued on their way again. They got off at an inn, they lodged him in a low room. "Tell me, Sancho, if you plan to give yourself another batch tonight, and if you want it to be under the roof, or in the open sky." "I would like it to be between trees, which seem to accompany me and help me carry out my work wonderfully." "Well, it doesn't have to be like that, Sancho my friend," answered Don Quixote, "but in order for you to gain strength, we have to keep it for our village, which, at the latest, will arrive there after tomorrow." Sancho replied that he should do as he pleased, but that he would like to conclude that business quickly in hot blood and when the mill was down, because often the danger often lies in delay. And, with this, the talk of him ceased for then. Chapter LCI. How Don Quixote and Sancho arrived at their village. At this point a traveller on horseback arrived at the inn, with 3 or 4 servants, one of whom said to what seemed like their lord, "Your Grace, Mr. Alvaro Tarf, can spend your siesta here today, the inn seems clean and fresh." Hearing this, Don Quixote said to Sancho, "Look, Sancho, when I leafed through that book of the second part of my history, it seems to me that in passing I came across this name of Don Alvaro Tarf there." "It could very well be," answered Sancho. "Let him get off, we'll ask him later." "Without a doubt, I think that your worship must be that Don Alvaro Tarf who is printed in the second part of the history of Don Quixote de la Mancha, recently printed and given to the light of the world by a modern author." "I am the same," replied the knight, "and this Don Quixote, the main subject of such a story, was a very great friend of mine, and I was the one who took him out of his land." "And tell me, your Grace, Mr. Don Alvaro, do I look anything like that Don Quixote that your Grace says?" "No, by the way," answered the host, "not at all." "And this Don Quixote," said ours, "did he bring with him a squire named Sancho Panza?" "Yes, he did," replied Don Alvaro. "I think so very well," said Sancho at this point, "that Sancho that your Grace says, gentlemen, must be some great villain, cold-blooded and thief together, that the true Sancho Panza I am. Me. And the true Don Quixote de la Mancha, the famous, the brave and the discreet, the one in love, is this gentleman who is present, who is my master. All other Don Quixote and any other Sancho Panza is ridicule and dream thing." "My God, I believe it," Don Alvaro replied, "and I have no doubt that the enchanters who persecute Don Quixote the good wanted to persecute me with Don Quixote the bad." "I," said Don Quixote, "I don't know if I'm good, but I know how to say that I'm not bad. Finally, Mr. Alvaro Tarf, I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, the same as fame says, and not that unfortunate man who has wanted to usurp my name and honor himself with my thoughts. I beg your Grace to make a declaration before the mayor of this place that I am not the Don Quixote printed in the second part, nor is the Sancho Panza the one that your Grace knew." "I will do that very willingly," replied Don Alvaro, "since it causes admiration to see 2 Don Quixotes and 2 Sanchos at the same time, and I say it again and I affirm that I have not seen what I have seen, nor has it happened for me what has happened." At this point it was time to eat. Don Quixote and Don Alvaro ate together. Perhaps the mayor of the town entered the inn, with a clerk, before whom the mayor asked Don Quixote, for a petition, that it was in his right that Don Alvaro Tarf, that gentleman who was present there, declare before his Grace as I did not know Don Quixote de la Mancha, who was also present there, and who was not the one who was printed. Finally, the mayor legally provided, the declaration was made with all the force that should be made in such cases, leaving Don Quixote and Sancho very happy. Evening came, they left that place, and after half a league they separated 2 different paths, one that led to the village of Don Quixote, and the other the one that Don Alvaro was to take. That he spent that night among other trees, to give Sancho time to do his penance, that he did it the same way he did last night, at the cost of the bark of the beeches. The deceived Don Quixote did not lose a single stroke of the account, and he found that with those of last night it was 3029. It seems that the sun had risen early to see the sacrifice, with whose light they continued on their way again. That day and that night they walked without anything worthy of being told, except that Sancho finished his task there, with which Don Quixote was exceedingly happy, and he waited for the day, to see if on the way he would meet his lady Dulcinea, already disenchanted. With these thoughts and desires they climbed an uphill, from which they discovered his village. With this, they went down the slope and went to their village. Chapter VIII. Of the omens that Don Quixote had when he entered his village, with other events that adorn and prove this great story. At the entrance of the town, they ran into a small meadow praying to the priest and the bachelor Carrasco. Then the two met the priest and the bachelor, who came to them with open arms. Finally, surrounded by boys and accompanied by the priest and the bachelor, they entered the town, and went to Don Quixote's house, and found at her door the mistress and her niece. Teresa Panza, who, disheveled and half naked, holding her daughter Sanchica by the hand, went to see her husband. "How come you come like this, my husband, since it seems to me that you come on foot and wildly, and you look more like a ungoverned than a governor?" "Hush, Teresa," answered Sancho, "let's go to our house, you'll hear wonders there. Money I bring, which is what matters, earned by my industry and without harm to anyone." They went to his house, leaving Don Quixote in the power of his niece and his mistress, and in the company of the priest and the bachelor. Briefly, he told them that he was due, and the obligation he had agreed not to leave his village for a year, and that he intended to become a shepherd that year, and entertain himself in the solitude of the fields. And that he begged them, if they wanted to be his companions, that he would buy enough sheep and cattle to give them the name of shepherds. Don Quixote replied that he was to be called Pastor Quixote, and the bachelor, Pastor Carrascan, and the priest, Pastor Curambro, and Sancho Panza, the shepherd Pansino. Everyone was astonished to see the new madness of Don Quixote, but, so that his cavalry would not leave the town again, hoping that in that year he could be cured, they conceded with his new intention. With this, they took leave of him, and they begged and advised him to take account of his health, by giving himself whatever was good. As luck would have it, his niece and his mistress heard the talk of the three of them, and, just as they left, they both entered with Don Quixote, and the niece said to him, "What is this, Señor Uncle? Now that we thought that your grace was reduced to your house again, and spent a quiet and honest life there, do you want to get into new labyrinths, becoming a shepherd boy, you who come, a shepherd boy, you who go? Still, bad for bad, it's better to be a knight-errant than a shepherd. Stay in his house, attend to his estate, confess often, favor the poor, and on my soul if it goes wrong." "Shut up, daughters," Don Quixote answered them, "for I know very well what fulfills me. I will not always stop going to what you need, as you will see from the work." Chapter VIII. How Don Quixote fell ill, and the will he made, and his death. As human things are not eternal, always going in decline from their principles until they reach their ultimate end, especially the lives of men, and as Don Quixote's did not have the privilege of heaven to stop the course of his death came. And an ending when he least expected it, either because of the melancholy that caused him to be defeated, or because of the disposition of heaven, which thus ordered it, a fever took root in him that kept him in bed for 6 days. These, believing that the sorrow of being defeated and of not seeing his wish fulfilled in Dulcinea's freedom and disenchantment had that fate, by all possible means they tried to cheer him up, telling him the bachelor to cheer up and get up, to begin his pastoral exercise. But Don Quixote did not leave his sadness for this. His friends called the doctor, he took his pulse, and he wasn't very happy, and said that, yes or no, he should attend to the health of his soul, because that of his body was in danger. Don Quixote begged to be left alone, because he wanted to sleep a little. He awoke, and, giving a loud voice, said, "Blessed be the mighty God, who has done me so much good. In short, his mercies have no limit, nor do they abbreviate or prevent the sins of men." "The mercies," responded Don Quixote, "niece, are those that God has used with me at this instant, who, as I said, are not prevented by my sins. I already have judgment, free and clear, without the colliginous shadows of ignorance, which my bitter and continuous legend of the detestable books of chivalry placed on me. I already know his nonsense and the tricks of him, and it does not weigh me down but that this disappointment has come so late, that it does not leave me time to make any reward, reading others that are light of the soul. I feel, niece, at the point of death, I would like to do it in such a way that it would make it understood that my life had not been so bad that I left a reputation for madness, that, since I have been, I would not want to confirm this truth in my death." With the entrance of the three. As soon as Don Quixote saw them, he said, "Give me good luck, good gentlemen, that I am no longer Don Quixote de la Mancha, but Alonso Quijano, whom my customs have given me the reputation of good. I am already an enemy of Amadis de Gaula and of all the infinite throng of his lineage. All the profane stories of knight-errantry are already hateful to me. I already know my foolishness and the danger in which they put me for having read them. Now, by the mercy of God, punishing my own head, I abominate them. And Samson said to him, Now, Señor Don Quixote, we have news that Mrs. Dulcinea is disenchanted. Does your worship come out with that? And now that we are so close to being shepherds, to go through life singing, like princes, does your grace want to become a hermit? Street, for your life, come to your senses, and stop telling stories. Those up to here, replied Don Quixote, who have been true to my harm, my death will turn, with the help of heaven, to my benefit. I, gentlemen, feel that I am dying in a hurry, leave jokes aside, and bring me a confessor who will confess me and a scribe who will make my will, that in such trances as this one man should not be mocked with his soul, and so, I beg that, while the priest confesses me, they go for the notary. The priest made the people leave, and he remained alone with him, and confessed to him. The bachelor went for the notary public, and shortly afterwards he returned with him and Sancho Panza. Truly, Alonso Quijano el Bueno is dying, and truly sane, we may as well go in to make his will. The scribe entered with the others, and, after Don Quixote had made the head of the will and ordered his soul. Arriving at the demands, he said, Item, it is my will that of certain moneys that Sancho Panza, whom in my madness I made my squire, has, that, because there have been between him and me certain accounts, and give and take, I want that he is not responsible for them, nor is he asked for any account, but that if there is any left over, after having paid what I owe him, the rest is his. And, if as being crazy I was part to give him the government of the island, I could now, being sane, give him that of a kingdom, it would be given to him, because the simplicity of his condition and fidelity of his treatment deserves it. And, turning to Sancho, he said, Forgive me, friend, for the occasion I have given you to seem crazy like me, making you fall into the error into which I have fallen, that there were and are knights errant in the world. Oh! Replied Sancho, crying, Your worship should not die, my lord, but take my advice and live many years, because the greatest folly that a man can do in this life is to let himself die, without further ado, without anyone asking him. Mate, nor other hands finish him than those of melancholy. Look, don't be lazy, but get up out of bed, and let's go to the field dressed as shepherds, as we have agreed. Perhaps behind some bush we will find the lady Dulcinea disenchanted, that there is nothing more to see. If he dies of regret at being defeated, blame me, saying that because I cinched Rocinante badly they knocked him down. What's more, that your worship will have seen in your books of chivalry to be an ordinary thing for some knights to topple others, and the one who is defeated today will be the winner tomorrow. Gentlemen, said Don Quixote, I was crazy, and now I am sane. I was Don Quixote de la Mancha, and I am now, as I have said, Alonso Quijano el Bueno. May with your favors my repentance and my truth return to the estimation that was held of me, and continue forward the Lord Notary. Item, I send all my property, behind closed doors, to Antonia Quijana, my niece. And the first satisfaction I want is to pay the wages I owe for the time my mistress has served me, plus 20 ducats for a dress. I leave as my executors the priest and the bachelor Sanson Carrasco. Item, it is my will that if Antonia Quijana, my niece, wants to get married, she marries a man about whom information was first made who does not know what things are books of chivalry, and, in case it is found out that she knows it, and, with all that, my niece wants to marry him, and she does marry, she loses everything I have commanded her. Item, I beg the said gentlemen, my executors, that if good luck leads them to meet the author who they say composed a story that goes around with the title of second part of the exploits of Don Quixote de la Mancha, on my behalf ask him, as earnestly as possible, to forgive the occasion that without thinking I gave him of having written so many and such great nonsense as he writes in it, because I leave this life with the scruple of having given him reason to write them. With this he closed his will, and, taking a swoon, stretched out lengthwise on the bed. And in 3 days that he lived after this where he made the will, he fainted very often. He walked the house in an uproar, but, nevertheless, the niece ate, the housekeeper toasted, and Sancho Panza rejoiced, that this thing of inheriting something erases or tempers in the air the memory of the pain that is the reason that the dead man leaves. Finally, the last of Don Quixote arrived, after receiving all the sacraments, and after having abominated the books of chivalry with many and effective reasons. The scribe was found present, and said that he had never read in any book of chivalry that any knight-errant had died in his bed so calmly and so Christianly as Don Quixote, which, between compassions and tears of those who were there, gave the spirit of him, I mean that he died. Seeing what the priest, asked the clerk to give him as testimony how Alonso Quijano the Good, commonly called Don Quixote de la Mancha, had passed from this present life and died naturally, and that such testimony asked to remove the occasion of some other author that Cide Hamet Benengeli resurrect him falsely, and make endless stories of his exploits. This was the end of the ingenious Hidalgo de la Mancha, whose place he did not want to put Cide Hamet on time, for letting all the towns and places of La Mancha contend with each other to godfather him and have him as their own, as the 7 cities of Greece contended for Homer. Stop putting here the tears of Sancho, Don Quixote's niece and mistress, the new epitaphs of his grave, although Sanson Carrasco put this one, here lies the strong Hidalgo who came so bravely to such extremes, who warns that death does not he triumphed over his life with his death. He had the whole world in little, he was the scarecrow and bogeyman of the world, at such a juncture, that he credited his fortune to die sane and live crazy. And the most prudent Cide Hamet said to his pen, here you will remain, hanging from this skewer and from this wire, I don't know if my penola is well cut or badly sliced, where you will live for long centuries, if presumptuous and mischievous historians don't pick you up to profane you. But, before they come to you, you can warn them, and tell them in the best way you can. Tate, you fools! Be touched by none, because this company, good king, was saved for me. Don Quixote was born for me alone, and I for him, he knew how to act and I how to write, only the two of us are for in one, despite and in spite of the feigned writer from Tordesillas who dared, or will dare, to write with a rude and poorly drawn ostrich quill the deeds of my brave knight, because it is not the burden of his shoulders nor matter of his cold wit, whom you will warn, if you happen to meet him, to let the tired and already rotten bones of Don Quixote rest in the tomb, and not want to take him, against all the laws of death, to old Castile, making him come out of the outside where he really and truly lies stretched out from long to long, unable to make a third journey and a new start, that, to make fun of as many as so many knights errant did, the 2 that he did are enough, so much to the pleasure and satisfaction of the people whose news they reached, as well in these as in strange kingdoms. And with this you will fulfill your Christian profession, advising well those who want you badly, and I will be satisfied and proud of having been the first to fully enjoy the fruit of his writings, as I wished, since my desire has been none other than to put into practice abhorrence of men the feigned and absurd stories of the books of chivalry, which, by those of my true Don Quixote, are already stumbling, and must fall completely, without a doubt. Voucher. The end.